The story kicks off in a bustling cafe. An elegant girl walks in, effortlessly stealing the spotlight. Her long, flowing hair, striking legs, and towering presence leave two girls in awe. One, enchanted by her icy composure, dubs her the Ice Princess, while the other sees her as a true original. Sensing their admiration, she shoots them a frosty glance before looking away with effortless indifference, making the girls blush, even more dazzled by her untouchable aura. As her turn arrives at the cafe, the receptionist cheerfully asks for her order. Standing with effortless grace, she simply narrows her eyes at the menu, her cold expression making even the drink options nervous. Meanwhile, her ears catch the hushed whispers of the cashier girls, gushing over her like she's a runway model. With an air of indifference, she finally orders a black coffee, stunning the receptionist who clearly wasn't ready for such an attitude-packed request. Coffee in hand, she strides down the street, every passerby turning to admire her presence. Among them, a boy eyes her curiously, nudging his friend with a theory that she must be a foreigner or at least half Japanese. He dares his friend to approach, but the poor guy instantly refuses, convinced she'd dismiss him on sight. After all, a woman like her doesn't entertain casual admirers. As she takes a sip of her coffee, she nearly flinches. The bitterness is unbearable. She doesn't even like black coffee. In truth, she craves something sweet, yet now she's glaring at the mug, silently questioning her own life choices. But with everyone still mesmerized by her aura, seeing her as the epitome of elegance, independence, and an ice-cold heart, she refuses to break the illusion. So with unwavering composure, she takes another sip, pretending it's exactly what she wanted. She recalls a childhood memory when a boy called her Alicia-chan and assumed she was half Russian. His weirded-out expression upon learning she couldn't speak Russian still haunts her. Exhaling in disappointment, she refuses to see that same look on anyone's face again. So when another group of boys hesitantly admires her beauty, debating whether she's some high-class heiress, she shoots them an irritated glare. The effect is immediate: panic, shock, and a swift retreat. Satisfied, she turns on her heel, striding away elegantly, silently vowing not to be trapped by people's expectations. Yet as she pretends to enjoy her black coffee, the bitter taste suddenly overwhelms her, triggering an abrupt cough. An awkward moment, but thankfully, no one is around to witness her break character. But a little boy watches her, not with admiration, but concern, clearly puzzled by her odd choking. Shocked to see someone looking at her without awe, she barely registers his silent notice of the coffee splashed on her hand. Panic creeps in. A refined woman shouldn't make such a blunder. Trying to recover, she casually flicks her hand, then coolly runs her fingers through her hair, expecting admiration. Instead, the boy glares, clearly annoyed. Her careless wave just sent coffee flying everywhere. Panic deepens as he impatiently eyes her, as if questioning why she doesn't even have a tissue for this mess. He hands her a handkerchief, expecting her to wipe her hand. Ridiculous. A cold ice princess doesn't take orders from a child, so she simply glares at him, attempting to look intimidating, though deep down she's too flustered to react. But the boy, unfazed by her act, only looks more irritated. Before she can process it, he coldly presses the handkerchief onto her hand himself, as if handling a stubborn mess. Then, without waiting for a response, he turns and walks away, leaving her stunned and oddly defeated. She stares at her hand on the handkerchief, as if confirming it's truly hers. A strange warmth fills her chest, a mix of affection and happiness. Her face flushes, but the realization makes her jolt. Shaking her head, she quickly regains composure. Right then, two girls approach, expressing admiration for her elegant presence. Instantly, she dons a cold expression, glaring at them. Yet, despite her icy stare, they remain in awe. As she walks away, disbelief lingers. Why did she react like that? But she quickly found an excuse. It was only because that little boy wasn't admiring her like the others. Otherwise, she would have never broken character. Now, during the English lecture, she reads aloud, and as expected, everyone is impressed. After all, she's half Russian. Some students still find it hard to believe, but they admire even her proper sitting posture. As usual, when she glares back, they take it as a reward rather than a warning, one even blushing in delight. The teacher's sharp command for silence snaps them back, while she silently appreciates how her glare keeps people at a distance. In reality, her English isn't great, but expectations weigh on her. A half-Russian, cool-headed, and reserved girl simply has to excel. So she practices endlessly, determined not to disappoint. Remembering yesterday's slip, when she let her cold act crack, she quickly decides, it won't happen again. As the teacher calls on Mikashima-san to read the next chapter, she freezes. The moment he stands up and starts reading, shock hits her. He's the boy from yesterday. She had assumed he was an elementary student. Here he is, in her class. Panic creeps in. How had she not noticed him for an entire month? Then again, with his height, it was easy to overlook. Her gaze drifts to the handkerchief he gave her, still in her possession. As the lecture ends, students stretch and yawn, slumping into their chairs. When someone casually asks where Mikashima is headed, he calmly replies that he's going to the restroom, a simple answer that instantly catches Alicia-san's attention. The moment he steps outside, she is already there, waiting with her usual cold demeanor, fixing him with a sharp glare. But instead of being flustered like everyone else, he simply brushes it off and walks away, panicking her. Determined to return the handkerchief, she hesitates before instinctively following him. Her eyes dart around nervously, realizing she has no idea how to start a conversation. After all, she hasn't spoken to anyone in years. Lost in thought, she snaps back to reality. He is staring at her, awkwardly. Only then does she realize she blindly followed him straight to the boys' restroom. Heat rushes to her face as nearby boys smirk and chuckle. Trembling, she stiffens, forces a cold expression, and swiftly turns on her heel, striding away as if nothing happened. Once outside, mortification hits full force. She sinks down, covering her face in embarrassment. How could she mess up this badly? Before she can recover, Mikashima-san approaches, his voice laced with concern. She instantly straightens, trying to regain her composure, only to freeze again when he smirks and casually asks why she wandered into the men's restroom. Her face burns, and without a word, she bolts, leaving him thoroughly confused. As she runs, one resolution burns in her mind: stay focused, stay composed, and never ever break character again. The next day, as he walks through school, students still gossip about Alicia's half-Russian beauty, admiring her queenly aura. One girl warns another about her piercing glare, a silent challenge to anyone daring to approach. Yet when Alicia does glare, the girls become giddy with excitement, treating it like a prized reward. However, when she locks eyes with Mikashima, confusion flickers across her face. Despite being in the same class, he remains unimpressed by her icy demeanor, unlike the others, who idolize her lone wolf nature. Alicia is determined to maintain her unyielding, icy facade, not allowing even the slightest crack in her cold exterior. As her eyes land on the handkerchief he had given her, she contemplates how to return it without compromising her aloof image. Standing near an open window, she watches a lone leaf drift gracefully in the breeze. An idea sparks in her mind. What if she simply lets the handkerchief slip from her fingers, letting it fall at his feet, a silent command for him to pick it up himself? Fully committed to her idea, she decides to return the handkerchief while maintaining her signature coldness. Yet a lingering confusion gnaws at her. Why do her sharp glares do not affect him? Still, as she notices Mikashima approaching, she steels her expression, ensuring no hint of hesitation seeps through. As he nears, unimpressed and visibly annoyed by her piercing gaze, he merely looks at her with mild irritation. Without wasting a second, Alicia forcefully throws the handkerchief toward him, only for it to land directly on his face. Her eyes widen in panic. That was not how she intended it to go. Frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do, she instinctively decides to walk away as if nothing happened. Before she can escape, a visibly frustrated Mikashima grabs her wrist, his irritation clear, as if questioning whether she had provoked him on purpose. As he opens one eye, his gaze lands on the fallen piece of cloth. Picking it up, he realizes it's his own handkerchief. Curiously, he wonders if she had actually intended to return it. But his sharp, irritated tone sends a wave of panic through her. Overwhelmed, she stumbles backward and collapses onto the ground. Her face flushes with embarrassment, teary eyes darting up as she hurriedly mumbles an apology. Now it's his turn to panic. Seeing her on the verge of tears, he hastily tries to calm her down. However, his concern turns to sheer shock when he notices her, completely flustered, gripping a fire extinguisher, raised as if preparing for battle. Mikashima immediately rushes toward her, his voice laced with concern as he urges her to put the fire extinguisher down. But Alicia, still overwhelmed by embarrassment, has no idea how to recover from this blunder. As he worriedly reaches out to take it from her, his movement accidentally knocks against her leg. The sudden jolt causes her to lose balance, sending both the fire extinguisher and herself crashing down. Unfortunately, she topples straight onto him. Amid the chaos, he hurriedly reassures her, asking her to calm down for a moment. But overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of the situation, Alicia, humiliated beyond words, feels her vision blur. The last thing she registers is collapsing against his shoulder before everything fades to black. A few minutes later, as her eyes flutter open, she finds herself lying on a bed. Confused at first, she exhales in relief, assuming it was all just a bizarre dream. However, as she instinctively reaches for the handkerchief and finds it missing, doubt creeps in. While he looks clearly annoyed by her overly dramatic reaction. The next day in class, a furious student storms up to Mikashima, demanding answers. Annoyed, he asks if he's just looking for a fight. The boy, equally heated, declares that Mikajima's response will decide whether they brawl or not. But before he can finish, everyone watches in shock. Despite his short height, Mikashima effortlessly grabs the guy, sending him crashing to the ground. As the teary-eyed student gets up, wincing and whining about his rudeness, Mikashima, unimpressed, points out that he was the one looking for a fight. The boy quickly corrects. His challenge depended on Mikajima's answer, not an automatic brawl. Still clutching his sore hand, Mikashima expressionlessly asks Hanari about the deal. Hanari instantly lights up, thrilled to spill the latest gossip. He eagerly raves about Alicia-chan, the half-Russian Ice Queen beauty whose piercing glare alone could send shivers down spines. A complete enigma, she's never been seen smiling or socializing since enrolling, making her more of a school myth than an actual student. Hanari storms up to him, furious, demanding to know if he was just seen with her. When he curiously asks if he's ever seen her smile, his irritated denial only fuels Hanari's excitement. By this logic, every guy still has a chance. Smirking, Hanari further teases that no one would even want to go out with Mikashima. That earns him an instant angry punch. Before he can recover, Mikashima pins him down, legs locked, making him collapse with a loud yelp. Despite the pain, he staggers up, oddly motivated. His chances with her just might not be zero. Outside the classroom, she stands by the door, flustered and shocked as she overhears the boys' conversation. The mere thought of going out with someone makes her blood boil, yet the idea of disappointing their expectations leaves her even more conflicted. Annoyed but determined, she keeps her serious expression intact. Her aura must not be compromised. At that moment, two girls in the corridor admire her, watching as she walks like a model. But already annoyed, she shoots them a sharp glare, sending them into a terrified panic. Sitting elegantly on her chair, she remains cold and unreadable, leaving students whispering, "Does she treat everyone this way or just specific people?" One observant classmate mutters that she gives off a wolf-like Ice Queen aura. Meanwhile, a large crowd of boys gathers outside the window, watching her with shock and suspicion. Mikashima, bewildered by the scene, gets a hushed explanation from Hanari. These guys are here for a challenge. Apparently, they've heard the latest prediction. Witnessing her smile is the ultimate prize. Enduring the endless whispers, she grows increasingly annoyed, especially when the students start pushing one of them forward to approach her. Terrified, he immediately refuses, but shock ripples through the room when another, mustering all his courage, hesitantly steps up. Stammering through his introduction, he explains he's from the next class and just wanted to chat. Big mistake. One sharp, icy glare from her, and he freezes like a statue, completely stunned. The rest of the students panic, watching in horror. Defeated, he stumbles back, only for Hanari to scold him loudly for his miserable failure. As the group debates sending another brave soul, Mikashima steps into the classroom, leaving Hanari completely shocked. Meanwhile, she exhales sharply. Whether it's him or anyone else, she has absolutely no intention of smiling. On the other side, everyone is stunned to see him holding an adorable, smiling black cat. Even the boys, along with the girls, rush over to admire it. At that moment, unable to resist the cat's overwhelming cuteness, Alicia unknowingly smiles, assuming no one is watching. But the instant she realizes Mikashima is staring at her in shock, she quickly turns away, hoping no one else noticed. Embarrassed by her sudden smile, she struggles to maintain her usual composure, while he remains frozen, utterly shocked at what he just witnessed. After unintentionally smiling, Alicia feels both puzzled and embarrassed, fully aware of the rumor. If she smiles at someone, it means she likes them and would go out with them. Realizing that only Mikajima saw her smile, she decides to deceive him to avoid any misunderstandings. Meanwhile, Mikashima, still staring at the cat, is shaken by the image of her smiling face. However, he quickly regains control, reminding himself that the rumor is baseless and no one really cares whether she actually likes someone or not. Recalling her terrifying actions, especially yesterday's sudden fire extinguisher stunt, he firmly convinces himself not to be happy over such thoughts. Shaking his head, he dismisses the rumor entirely. As he moves away to let the cat go, everyone reminds him to be careful with it. While the girls remain mesmerized by its cuteness, the boys, however, snap back to reality, remembering their mission to make her smile. But as they turn toward her, they freeze in shock. Her chair is empty. As Mikajima steps out of the school and frees the struggling cat, he wonders if it regularly visits since it seems so friendly with people. But just as he turns back, Alicia suddenly appears in front of him, making him jolt in shock. Suspiciously, he glances around the corridor, then back at her, growing increasingly confused. Could the rumor be true? Did she actually come here to ask him out? The thought leaves him completely puzzled, but he takes a deep breath, deciding to wait for her to speak. Yet she just stands there, staring at him angrily, which only annoys him further. Meanwhile, Alicia glares, struggling to figure out how to start the conversation. Mikajima, slightly intimidated by her intense stare, momentarily wonders if she's hiding a sharp weapon and planning to kill him, but he quickly shakes off the ridiculous thought. Realizing that Mikajima also looks awkward, Alicia suspects he might actually believe the rumor. Instead of saying anything aloud, she decides to clear up the misunderstanding in her own way, but rather than explaining, she simply shoots him a weird, unsettling glare, one that only makes the situation even more confusing for him. On the other hand, Mikajima, convinced she's about to attack him, instinctively raises his hand in defense. But Alicia completely misinterprets the gesture, thinking he's asking her out. Her face instantly flushes red, but the moment she realizes her reaction, she quickly shakes her head to snap out of it. Unfortunately, he misreads this too, assuming she's just warming up, preparing to fight him. As Alicia shyly lowers her gaze, flustered by this unexpected turn, Mikashima, realizing she's not attacking him, grows even more confused. Then it suddenly clicks. She must be here because of the fake rumor, not because she actually wants to go out with him. Though still puzzled, he finally speaks, assuring her that everything will be fine and telling her not to worry. However, Alicia completely misinterprets his words, thinking he means she doesn't have to worry because he likes her too. Her face turns red as she becomes utterly mindless in embarrassment. Overwhelmed by his supposed kindness, she unintentionally places her hand on his defensively raised one. The moment she realizes her mistake, her face burns with embarrassment. She never meant to make it seem like she wanted to accept his feelings. Her panicked and flustered expression makes Mikajima slightly concerned, though he still doesn't grasp the full extent of her thoughts. With a reassuring smile, he simply tells her not to stress over the rumor, waves goodbye, and walks away without another word. Later at home, after finally calming down, Alicia feels the weight of embarrassment crash over her. Realizing how badly she misunderstood the entire situation, she buries her face in her hands, mortified. During PE class, Alicia plays basketball with unwavering determination and skill. As she leaps high and lands a perfect shot through the hoop, every girl watching is left in awe of her talent. But instead of acknowledging their admiration, she simply glares at them before resuming her game, completely unfazed. Outside, Hanari watches with admiration, his face tinged with a faint blush. Despite effortlessly gaining a fan base among the girls, she remains indifferent, as if their praise means nothing to her. To him, she is the perfect embodiment of a cold, untouchable ice princess. Curious, Hanari wonders if there's any strategy to make Alicia happy enough to smile. This instantly reminds Mikajima of the previous day, when she smiled at the cute cat, but as soon as the thought crosses his mind, he quickly shakes it off, flustered, realizing it was just a misunderstanding. Before he can process further, Hanari suddenly appears, placing a hand on his shoulder and eagerly asking for his opinion on making her smile. Then, without hesitation, he curiously asks if Mikajima also wants to go out with her. Mikajima immediately denies it, but Hanari, unconvinced, calls him a liar, accusing him of always being reserved. Annoyed, he snaps back, warning him not to call him that. When Mikajima asks why Hanari is so eager to go out with Alicia, Hanari's face lights up with affection, a faint blush appearing. He passionately explains that it's her elegance and the thrill of making her smile, especially since she never smiles at anyone else. The thought that she might smile just for him excites him even more. Lost in his fantasy, he closes his eyes and dramatically describes the romance of winning her heart. Mikajima, meanwhile, watches in disbelief, torn between irritation and exasperation. Just then, Sugiya Akaru-chin and Shiri-chin, who had been eavesdropping, suddenly appear. Brimming with excitement, Akuru-chin reminds Shiri-chin of the infamous rumor: whoever makes Alicia smile gets a chance to go out with her. Shiri-chin, adjusting her glasses with a shocked expression, scoffs, thinking it was just one of Akuru's usual baseless rumors. But when Akuru eagerly turns to Hanari for confirmation, Hanari enthusiastically reassures them that the rumor is indeed the hottest topic. However, their excitement quickly fades when Shiri-chin, with a cold and unimpressed expression, asks whether Alicia herself has ever confirmed this so-called news. Seeing their blank, clueless faces, she sighs and firmly states that it's nothing but a made-up rumor, and yet everyone is blindly believing it. This instantly annoys both Akuru and Hanari, who grumble in frustration, trying to argue that even if it's a rumor, it's still worth pursuing. As Akuru moves closer to Shiri-chin, she affectionately and enthusiastically tries to convince her that Alicia's cold, glaring eyes are enough to frighten anyone. Shiri, nodding in agreement, acknowledges this fact. However, when Akuru, with a dreamy and love-struck expression, passionately explains how she would bravely break through Alicia's icy glares with her overwhelming love, Shiri initially nods absent-mindedly. But the moment she fully realizes Akuru's true intention, her face turns red with embarrassment and frustration. With a loud shout, Shiri grabs Akuru's face, squeezing her cheeks as she scolds her for spouting such ridiculous and perverted thoughts. Meanwhile, watching their chaotic interaction, Hanari grows suspicious of their relationship, narrowing his eyes as he observes the two girls bickering. As Akuru showers Alicia with affectionate admiration, Shiri lets out a disappointed sigh. Stepping closer, she teasingly asks whether Shiri-chan is actually jealous of Alicia. Seeing her puzzled expression, Shiri smirks, and with playful affection, pokes her cheek while declaring that she, too, wants to make Shiri-chan fall in love with her, makes her immediately turns flustered, but regaining her composure, steps back with a confident grin. Folding her arms, she boldly declares that she loves all cute girls equally, making Shiri groan in frustration. Meanwhile, as this completely absurd conversation continues, Mikajima, who has been listening to everything, finally loses his patience. With an exasperated shout, he demands that they all stop talking nonsense, silencing the chaotic group at last. As the bell rings, ending PE class, Mikajima barely has a second to process before Akura, grinning mischievously, grabs his, unfairly short, shoulder from behind. Before he can protest, she starts dragging him toward Alicia, with the simple logic that no one avoids talking to Akira when she's holding a child like him. Mikajima, very much not a child, grits his teeth in silent outrage. But she, just ignoring him, marches ahead with confidence. Watching their awkward struggle toward Alicia, Hanari, with a smug smile and arms folded, prefers the role of a strategist, observing from a distance before making his move. Meanwhile, Alicia, thoroughly confused, watches as Akuru confidently drags a very reluctant Mikajima by the shoulders, like a lost child being returned to its owner. Alicia's sharp glare intensifies as she steps closer, curiosity flickering beneath her usual scowl. Mikajima, equally irritated, shoots an angry look back at Akuru, barking at her to stop pushing him. Unfazed, Akuru turns her attention to Alicia, casually inquiring about her interest in sports. Alicia's puzzled expression only fuels Akuru's enthusiasm. She presses further, marveling at her basketball skills and asking if she has been playing since childhood. When Alicia nonchalantly denies it, Akuru practically explodes with admiration, jumping in excitement over her natural talent. Mikajima, now thoroughly exasperated, watches as Akuru, face flushed with affection, waves at Alicia like a fangirl, calling her the perfect person. And yet, to his growing frustration, even this over-the-top praise barely seems to register with Alicia. Alicia stares at the hands resting on her shoulders, shocked by the unexpected closeness. Why is he so near? Meanwhile, Akuru realizes that none of her enthusiastic compliments are working, and instead, Alicia is just staring at her. Panic sets in. Did she say something weird? Is Alicia about to unleash her icy wrath? Akuru, panicked and embarrassed, still finds herself mesmerized by Alicia's cold, piercing gaze. In her flustered state, she unknowingly tightens her grip around Mikajima's neck. Meanwhile, Alicia, noticing Akuru's strange expression, steps closer out of concern. But Akuru, completely misinterpreting the approach, assumes Alicia is closing in on her and, in a nervous frenzy, tightens her grip even more. Now thoroughly convinced that Alicia's glare is growing harsher, she clenches Mikashima's neck even tighter, so much so that his breathing turns ragged. As Alicia moves to check on her, a panicked Akuru instinctively squeezes Mikajima's neck with full force. Alicia freezes. Shiri rushes over, shouting that Akuru is about to murder him. Snapping back, Akuru sees Mikajima's face turning red and quickly lets go, apologizing frantically. Gasping for air, Mikajima glares at her, ready to explode, until Shiri calmly grabs Akuru's hand and drags her to the next lecture. Before leaving, Shiri shoots a sharp glare at Alicia, leaving her utterly perplexed. The next day in class, Akuru sits with Mikajima on her lap, pouting as she asks for a strategy to make Alicia smile. Suddenly, Mikajima, completely fed up, jumps up, startling her. He spins around, yelling at her for irritating him and for hijacking his chair. Without a hint of guilt, Akuru grins and tells him not to be embarrassed. She even starts massaging his shoulders, suggesting he relax, which only makes him more annoyed. Just as he turns, ready to swat her away, Shiri appears with her usual cold expression, stopping Akuru from messing with him again. Akuru, unfazed, hugs Mikajima from behind, playfully calling him cute. Shiri, still unimpressed, teases his height, comparing him to an oversized stuffed toy. Akuru quickly jumps in, stopping her before she can say more. Meanwhile, Mikajima, too exhausted to care, simply relaxes as she finally lets him go. At that moment, Hanera suddenly appears, scolding Mikajima for spending too much time with girls. Caught off guard, Mikajima jumps in shock. Quickly recovering, he snaps back, irritated, insisting he was not enjoying it. Akuru was just annoying him. Anari, disappointed, ruffles Mikajima's hair, grumbling about how unfair it is. Unlike Mikajima, who isn't even interested in girls, they naturally flock to him because of his cuteness. Meanwhile, Mikajima, growing even more frustrated, shouts that he absolutely does not enjoy their company. As Hanari and Mikajima argue, Alicia grows increasingly irritated. The memory of Akuru casually holding him on her lap replays in her mind, an image so ridiculous it defies logic. She recalls how, at best, she had only managed a simple handshake with him before. Frustration bubbles up inside her. She clenches her fists, her glare sharpening. There's no way she's letting Akuru off easy. After class, Alicia walks gracefully, exuding her usual elegance, until Akuru suddenly appears beside her, completely unfazed by her annoyed expression. With a wide grin, she throws out a challenge. Alicia narrows her eyes, already irritated. A match? Before she can ask, Akuru clarifies with far too much excitement that it's a staring contest. Meanwhile, a group of boys peeks at the scene stunned. Hanari, equally shocked, mutters that seeing Alicia smile is practically impossible. Mikajima, unwillingly dragged into the spectacle, sighs in exasperation but still watches. Haida Kuhai shares Akuru's reasoning. Since she's a master of making weird and ridiculous faces, she's convinced she can finally make Alicia smile. Hanari, now visibly irritated, scoffs, only for his expression to shift into outright disbelief when someone adds that, according to Akuru, if she ever makes Alicia smile, that smile should belong only to her. Hanari stiffens to think, does Akuru also want to go out with Alicia? While Hanari and the others debate, Mikajima focuses on the real challenge, Alicia's reaction. It's practically impossible not to laugh at Akuru's ridiculous faces. She's made even the strictest teacher crack a smile, and even the cold, unshakable Shiri couldn't resist. Yet despite her best efforts, puffed cheeks, exaggerated pouts, and an impressively ugly fish face, Alicia remains stone-faced. Akuru, puzzled but not discouraged, doubles down, stretching her expressions to new levels of absurdity. This time, a flicker of amusement flashes in Alicia's eyes. She's holding back, despite struggling. Akuru, determined to win, sets the final rule: whoever laughs first loses. Locking eyes with Alicia, she prepares for battle. Both girls stare intensely, but Alicia's expression remains as cold and unreadable as ever. Akuru throws everything she has, but nothing, not even a twitch. Desperation kicks in. Tears well up in her eyes as exhaustion sets in. After one last hopeless attempt, she finally drops to her knees, utterly defeated. The boys, watching in shock, can't believe Akuru actually gave up. Before she can embarrass herself further, Shiri appears, calmly pulling her away, suggesting she just let it go. As they leave, Alicia, now alone, finally exhales. She had barely managed to hold in her laughter. After school, Alicia casually scans her surroundings with her usual intense, icy stare. Suddenly, Actin excitedly waves at her, calling her name. The unexpected greeting briefly jolts Alicia, but she remains unreadable. Noticing Alicia's cold, piercing gaze up close for the first time, she instinctively leans toward Shiri for support. Annoyed and slightly jealous, Shiri-chan bluntly suggests she just go home. Actin, without question, immediately follows orders. As they leave, Alicia exhales, relieved she didn't expose her identity. But suddenly, her sharp eyes catch something darting past. Curious, she follows it, eventually reaching the back of the school. There, a black cat sits calmly. She kneels beside it, offering a delicious treat from her hand. The cat immediately starts eating, its soft touch melting Alicia's usual cold stare. A small, genuine laugh escapes her lips. Realizing this, she quickly composes herself, but disappointment flickers in her eyes. No matter how hard she tries, she can never maintain her cool demeanor around cats. She then recalls how Mikishima had also held a cat so adorably. A fleeting thought crosses her mind. Was this the same cat from earlier in the school? As she remembers his cute face, a shocking realization hits her. He and the cat look oddly similar. But shaking the thought off, she dismisses it as nothing more than a coincidence. Lost in thought, she doesn't notice the cat suddenly darting away. Wanting to pet it more, she chases after it, following it into a room. Without thinking, she reaches out, assuming it's the cat, but instead she grabs Mikijima by the hands. Due to his short height, he ends up dangling slightly in the air. The moment she realizes her mistake, her face turns red with embarrassment. She quickly lets go, flustered, then tries to cover it up with an intense glare. But as usual, Mikijima is unfazed. Annoyed, he shouts at her for always causing him trouble. Alicia quickly realizes that her cold glares don't work on him. He's already seen too many of her slip-ups. A horrifying thought crosses her mind. What if he tells his friends? If they all find out she's not an untouchable ice princess, but just awkward and clumsy, wouldn't they lose interest in her? The mere idea makes her panic. Covering her ears, she flushes even more, overwhelmed by embarrassment. Seeing her strange reaction, Mikijima frowns and questions if she's all right. But as Alicia's gaze fixes on him, her eyes suddenly widen at the sight of something behind him, a tail. She freezes. Was he the cat all along? Her mind races, connecting the details. That explains why she grabbed him instead of the cat. Both are small, black, and cute. Flustered at the thought of breaking her cold, composed image so many times in front of both Mikijima and the cat, her face turns red as panic sets in. Misinterpreting the situation, Alicia's thoughts spiral. If he was the cat all along, then he's already aware of her soft side for them. That must be why he never seems affected by her cold, intimidating stares. Still deep in thought, she keeps staring at him, making Mikijima sigh in annoyance before leaving. But instead of listening, she panics. If he goes out with that tail still showing, he'll be in trouble. Without hesitation, she throws her arms around his neck, determined to protect him. If people find out he can transform, they might hate him, or worse, consider him a monster. Her overthinking escalates. What if dangerous agencies capture him for horrifying experiments? With genuine concern for the first time, she gently holds his shoulders, eyes filled with emotion, and solemnly promises to keep his secret. But just as she speaks, the actual cat crawls out from behind him. Her entire world shatters. Frozen in shock, she stares at the cat, then at Mikijima, who looks just as confused, wondering what nonsense she's talking about. Realization hits hard. Embarrassment floods in. Completely speechless, she turns red, utterly horrified by her own ridiculous misunderstanding. After school, she sits alone in a cafe, holding a coffee mug in her hands. Customers around her steal admiring glances, murmuring about how the drink suits her elegant aura. Calmly, she takes a sip, then immediately places it back, annoyed. She hates coffee. But to maintain her image, she keeps up the act, pretending to enjoy it. Her gaze drifts to the display of sweets, chocolates, shakes, and beautifully decorated desserts, all of which seem completely out of her reach. As curious customers watch, wondering what's on her mind, she comes to a decision. She'll take this black coffee home, add some milk, and then drink it. At that moment, the waiter approaches the customers, humbly offering them a sample of the cafe's new dessert menu. The girls around her light up with excitement upon seeing the beautifully plated strawberry chiffon cake with sweet cream. Their cheerful reactions startle her. As the realization sinks in that this is just a sample, she relaxes. She had never been aware of this system of letting customers taste new products, but this works in her favor. For once, she can enjoy something sweet without breaking her image. Maintaining her usual cold demeanor, she pretends to be uninterested. But deep down, she eagerly waits for her turn, watching as the waiter moves closer. As the waiter approaches the customer next to her, excitement bubbles within her. Just the thought of tasting something sweet almost makes her smile. But the moment the waiter steps closer, her habit takes over. Instinctively, she glares with her usual cold stare. The waiter freezes for a second, startled. Then, recalling the head chef's strict instructions, never disturb customers who want to sit alone. If they give a cold look, it means they don't wish to be approached. The waiter simply smiles politely and walks away without offering her a sample. She sits there, completely stunned. Her gaze follows the waiter, utterly betrayed, while a deep sense of regret and embarrassment washes over her. Realizing that she just lost her chance, she grips the coffee mug tightly, near to tears, devastated over missing the sweet dish. At that moment, Mikajima appears with his meal tray, briefly pausing upon spotting her. Without a word, he sets his untouched strawberry cup on her table. "Got this from the register. No mood to eat it," he mutters, avoiding eye contact before walking away. Eyes fixed on the dessert, she processes the gesture. A flicker of excitement stirs within, but she grips her coffee mug tightly, masking any sign of emotion. After school, Mikajima and his friends stroll through the supermarket when Hanari, ever dramatic, suggests Mikajima cook him a hamburger steak since he's already making dinner. Mikajima, without even looking, shuts him down instantly. Just then, he accidentally bumps into a little girl. As he quickly apologizes, she gazes up at him with wide, teary eyes, then, as if she's the one at fault, bows deeply in a ridiculously formal apology and dashes off before he can react. Hanari, instantly captivated by the adorably polite little girl, gushes about how she must be from an elite private elementary school. Meanwhile, Mikajima remains silent, still unsettled by something strange in her eyes. As the boys continue walking, chatting, and eventually parting ways, Mikajima finds himself alone. Just as he turns a corner, he stops short. There she is again, sitting quietly in his path. Without acknowledging her, he walks past, ignoring her disappointed sigh. But before he can take another step, a small hand suddenly grabs his wrist, jolting him in shock. The little girl glares up at him, scolding him for ignoring a helpless child sighing in distress. Mikajima, still in shock, asks what she's talking about and whether she has a problem. Looking down with a defeated sigh, she mutters that telling him wouldn't solve anything anyway. Taking that as his cue to leave, he shrugs and turns away, only for her to grab his wrist again, this time accusing him of interfering in her business. Annoyed, he fires back that she's the one butting into his life. When he offhandedly asks if she lost something, she flares up even more. With a dramatic huff, she turns away, clears her throat, and, cheeks slightly flushed, declares her love and her wish to make this person happy. Mikajima stares blankly, completely lost in this absurd conversation, before awkwardly offering a casual "good luck with that." To his horror, her face lights up with sheer delight. Seeing her so happy over such a trivial thing, he sighs in defeat and agrees if cheering someone up makes her happy, then fine, he's in. The girl beams at him, eyes practically sparkling with admiration as she praises his kindness despite his grumpy demeanor. This unexpected affection instantly irritates him, and he glares back, clearly irritated either she wasn't fighting with him. As she innocently explains her plan, reminding him that he already agreed, she sweetly suggests he disappear for her. At that exact moment, 2 elementary school boys lift a trash bin, preparing to strike. Before he can react, they throw it at him. She watches expressionless, almost wishing for him to get hurt or lose his memory. Stunned, he demands to know why she's having random kids attack him. She cheerfully reminds him that she already told him she'll do anything for her beloved. None of it makes sense. As he struggles to process, he freezes in shock as Alicia approaches. Effortlessly lifting the little girl into her arms, she gently asks why she's here. Alice flails, demanding to be put down, calling Alicia her Wani-san. Realizing that Alice is actually Alicia's sister leaves him even more stunned. She coldly questions whether he did something to her sister. Shocked, he blurts out that Alice nearly killed him, leaving Alicia momentarily stunned. Turning to her sister, she studies her expression. Knowing Alice is a good kid, she's certain there must be a solid reason behind this. Still, she glares and demands an explanation. Alice hesitates, glancing at the others watching. Despite wanting to stay composed, Alicia's glare sharpens. Seeing her sister's trembling, near-teary face, she pauses, only to realize that Alice, rather than being intimidated, is actually admiring her cold demeanor. Confused, Alicia watches as Alice shivers, seemingly about to confess, only to suddenly smile and dismiss the idea altogether, completely ignoring her sister's piercing gaze. Alice calmly stands and composes herself before delivering shocking news. She informs Alicia that she overheard Tao and Mao, 2 boys from her class, saying that a short Mikijima was troubling her. The shock deepens when Alice mentions rumors about Alicia's smile and even recalls her being terrified back in kindergarten. Alicia, stunned, realizes her sister was only 3 years old back then, yet she still remembers. Alice clenches her fists, filled with determination, admitting she wanted to eliminate anyone who harmed her sister so she could live happily. Seeing her sister's emotional face, Alicia pulls her into a warm hug, affectionately confessing her love. She reassures Alice that Mikijima is merely a classmate, nothing more, and whispers for her not to erase him. Alice freezes in shock. Mikijima, watching from a distance, is clueless about their conversation. Then Alice turns, bows humbly, and apologizes for her actions. Though confused, he generously forgives her and waves them goodbye, hoping to meet again. But as Alice watches him leave, she glances at her sister's face, and instantly her resolve hardens. No matter what, she must erase him. The next morning, Alicia looks visibly annoyed by the noise in the classroom, where Akaru is loudly discussing something with her gang, making Alicia even more suspicious. Meanwhile, Akaru hides behind the attendance register, while Haida and Hanari also cover their faces. Mikijima watches them all in confusion, unable to understand what's going on. Curious, she asks her friends if they have any ideas on how to make Alicia smile. Hanari eagerly raises his hand and suggests Operation Gift. When she doesn't understand, he excitedly explains that they should give Alicia accessories, jewelry, or something girls usually like, as it might have a chance of making her smile. Since she herself likes gifts, she considers this option and writes it on the blackboard. She then suggests giving Alicia a small cute present. However, Haida, clearly annoyed, reminds her that the gift is meant for Alicia, not her. Offended, she offers herself as a reference, arguing that she's the only girl in this meeting. Despite her enthusiasm, she starts to worry. Would a simple gift really make Alicia happy? She doesn't seem like the type of person who would care about such things. The group falls into confusion, unsure if their plan will work. But instead of giving them an answer, he grows even more annoyed and irritated, shouting at them all to sit at his desk. This makes them emotional, and they desperately shout back, insisting that they are in the middle of an important discussion. Still frustrated, he demands to know why they are sitting at his desk. Innocently, Akaru excuses herself by saying it gives them easy access to the blackboard. However, when he points out that Alicia can also easily read what's written on the board, Akaru glances in her direction, trying to assess if she's paying attention. Though Alicia doesn't appear to be looking at them, in reality, she is watching. Mikijima, still concerned, warns them again, but Akaru confidently assures him that Alicia won't catch on. Then suddenly, she misinterprets his words, excitedly assuming that he wants to keep their meeting a surprise for Alicia. He immediately dismisses the idea, clearly irritated. After thinking for a moment, Akaru's face lights up with excitement as she suddenly comes up with a mind-blowing idea. Without hesitation, she eagerly asks to borrow Mikijima's pen and notebook. Everyone assumes she's going to jot down the important points of the meeting, but to their surprise, she dismisses that thought entirely and asks for just a few minutes. They watch curiously as she writes feverishly on the paper. A few minutes later, she proudly shows them her notebook, now completely filled with code words. Beaming with excitement, she explains that she used to play this secret code game in childhood with Shuri-chan. To her surprise, Haida also admits that he played a similar code game as a child, which amazes her. Mikijima looks genuinely impressed by her quick thinking. Meanwhile, Hanari is shocked to learn that Shuri liked this kind of game as well. However, Akaru excitedly confirms it, declaring that she and Shuri used to play this together all the time as childhood friends. Akaru, now curious, turns to Mikijima and asks for his suggestion. Determined, she begins writing the main points of the meeting on the blackboard in code words, confident that Alicia won't be able to understand them. However, the boys quickly realize that they also can't decipher the code, making them just as confused. As they struggle to read, Mikijima, after great effort, finally manages to decode one word, gift. Hanari, impressed, praises Akaru's hard work, feeling certain that Alicia would never figure it out. Meanwhile, Mikajima is completely absorbed in deciphering the rest of the code written in her notebook. Now that they've settled on giving Alicia a gift, she excitedly finalizes the idea but curiously asks what the gift should be. Haida calmly suggests jewelry or expensive bags, noting that Alicia's sister likes them. However, Hanari, shocked, reminds them that they don't have the money for such luxuries. Undeterred, Akaru writes jewelry on the board as an option. Mikajima then suggests that anything could be a gift, because the thought behind it matters most. Hanari immediately finds his idea awesome. Just as they finalize their plan, Shiri-chan approaches. Noticing their serious discussion, she instantly realizes the main topic and looks annoyed. Akaru, excited as ever, rushes toward her and even asks what gift she would like to receive. This makes Shiri momentarily happy, until she coldly replies that receiving gifts from strangers doesn't make her smile. It actually angers her. Akaru is shocked. Emotional and nearly in tears, she recalls the many times Shiri had smiled and thanked her after receiving cute gifts from her side. Feeling like she was lied to, she looks utterly heartbroken. Realizing this, Shiri immediately tries to calm her down, explaining that Akaru is her childhood friend, so gifts from her are special. Still, Akaru, now with a cute and innocent smile, asks her for gift ideas since Alicia is their classmate too. Anari, also innocently, asks for her help. Though visibly annoyed, Shiri coolly suggests that they write a letter to Alicia. Curious, Akaru asks if they should include a joke in it. Shiri immediately clarifies they should write their true feelings in the letter. Thinking about it for a moment, Akaru dismisses the idea, declaring that it's not suitable. The entire day she keeps thinking about the letter idea. Finally, as school ends, Alicia is walking through the corridor when she innocently approaches her. Bowing down slightly, she affectionately hands over a letter then. Immediately panicked, she runs away at full speed. From behind, Hanari shouts after her, teasing her for giving Alicia a letter despite initially rejecting the idea. But Akaru, with a smirk and a proud smile, boldly declares that this letter contains her true feelings. It's only afterward that she realizes she wrote the entire letter in code words. Hanari bursts out laughing, teasing her for being so absent-minded, as Alicia would have no way of understanding it. On the other side, Alicia stands frozen, staring at the letter in shock. She doesn't understand a single word. Just as she's trying to make sense of it, the letter slips from her hands. At that exact moment, Mikajima happens to pass by. Noticing the fallen paper, he instinctively bows down to pick it up. Glancing at the message, he reads it aloud, only to completely misinterpret it as a love confession from Akaru to Alicia. Realizing his mistake, he quickly brushes it off, hands the letter back to Alicia, and walks away. However, his loud reading already leaves Alicia stunned, her face slightly flustered. Before she can process anything further, Akaru rushes toward her, her face red with embarrassment. With an awkward, panicked expression, she apologizes frantically for writing the letter in code words. The next morning, Alicia wakes up with the same determination to maintain her composed and icy character regardless of the changing weather. As she opens her eyes, she notices Alice still peacefully sleeping beside her. A soft smile appears on her lips as she affectionately strokes her little sister's cheek, making Alice giggle in her sleep. Knowing Alice must have sneaked into her room again last night, Alicia sighs softly before getting up to start her morning routine. As Alice stirs awake and stretches, she greets her sister sleepily but suddenly gasps in shock upon seeing Alicia's outfit. Startled, she drops her stuffed rabbit, which Alicia calmly picks up and hands back to her. Alice stares at her sister in disbelief before blurting out a question about the sudden change in clothing. Alicia, unbothered, casually explains that the school is switching to summer uniforms this week. Alice, still processing the information, is immediately impressed by how stunning her sister looks in the new outfit. Without hesitation, she borrows their father's phone and eagerly starts taking pictures. Alicia watches her reflection in the mirror and exhales slowly. She reminds herself that she has been losing control over her carefully maintained demeanor lately, but today she is determined to regain it. With that thought, she fixes her expression back to its usual cold and composed state before heading out to school. However, upon arriving, a wave of confusion washes over her. As she glances around, she realizes that all the students are still wearing their winter uniforms. Her steps slow, and a sense of unease creeps in as she looks down at herself, suddenly questioning her memory. The teacher had announced the switch to summer uniforms, but was it this week or next? Standing alone, she feels a growing sense of panic as she realizes she is the only one dressed differently. As murmurs rise around her, she clenches her hands into fists, trying to maintain her composure. As Alicia imagines the inevitable teasing and questioning from her classmates about forgetting the correct date for the uniform change, panic surges through her. Without wasting another second, she swiftly turns around, deciding to rush back home and change before anyone notices her mistake. However, just as she hurriedly makes her way back, she freezes in place, her embarrassment multiplying tenfold as she finds Mikajima staring at her in shock. Before she can say anything, he casually informs her that the switch to summer uniforms is actually scheduled for the next week. The realization hits her like a brick, and she feels her entire face heat up with shame. Struggling to regain her usual composure, she forces herself to glare at him with her signature cold expression. But as always, he remains unaffected, simply watching her with an unreadable look. In a desperate attempt to salvage her pride, she dramatically declares that wearing this uniform early is just her personal way of staying ahead of the seasons. Mikajima, however, only raises an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced by her excuse. Alicia, still flustered, tries to act normal and composed despite the overwhelming embarrassment bubbling inside her. Sensing that he is not buying her reasoning, she hesitates before, in a barely audible voice, asking him not to tell anyone about this. Her words are rushed, her face burning with humiliation, but he remains as calm as ever. Understanding her distress, he casually shrugs off his jersey and hands it to her. She blinks in shock, staring at the offered garment with wide eyes. Seeing her hesitation, he assures her in his usual composed tone that wearing it would cover her uniform enough to prevent others from noticing. Still holding the jersey in her hands, she looks up at him with a puzzled, flustered expression, unable to comprehend why he's being so nonchalant about this situation. Noticing her reluctance, he nonchalantly mentions that the jersey is oversized and should fit her comfortably. That statement only makes her more self-conscious, as the thought of wearing his clothes makes the situation feel even more embarrassing, almost like something out of a romantic cliché. Her face turns crimson red, but realizing she has no other choice, she finally pulls the jersey over herself, standing awkwardly with her head slightly lowered. Mikajima watches with an amused expression before casually commenting that it fits her perfectly. Then, with excitement, he adds that one day he'll grow tall enough to wear it properly. Alicia wants to thank Mikajima, but, as always, settles for a glare instead. Just as she's about to speak, Alice's excited voice echoes through the corridor. Alice rushes toward her sister, relieved she hasn't reached school yet, until her eyes land on Mikajima. Shock turns to fury. Without hesitation, she charges at him, making Mikajima instinctively step back, sensing danger. Then Alice's sharp gaze locks onto Alicia's oversized jersey. Realization hits. Her sister is wearing his clothes. Her expression darkens instantly. Silently, she signals Mao Tao to handle Mikajima. Ever loyal, they catches the hint and gets ready for action. Meanwhile, Alicia casually hands Alice her uniform. Alice snatches it up, just as she hears that spring uniforms start next week. By then, both boys have already grabbed Mikajima. Alicia feels relieved to have her uniform, but also a bit worried. During spring week, Hanari, blushing, affectionately admires Alicia in her pristine white uniform, while Mikajima looks irritated by the unnecessary praise. Noticing his expression, Hanari playfully doubles down, complimenting her fresh and unique look. This reminds Mikajima of the previous week when Alicia had worn his jersey. Alice had rudely shoved her uniform at her, insisting she take off the weird thing. Alicia had quickly removed the jersey, promising to return it after washing it. But when Mikajima casually told her to just hand it back as it was, since she had only worn it for a few minutes, she had complied with a polite thank you. At that moment, Alice Chan had stormed in, furious. Realizing her relaxed attitude, Alicia had abruptly shifted back to her cold demeanor, tossing the jersey to the ground and ordering Mikajima to pick it up himself. This sudden change had left Mikajima utterly annoyed. Snapping back to the present, he hears Hanari mention that Alicia is approaching. Confused, he watches as she strides past them, shooting a sharp glare at the boys before walking away. A few days later, the students excitedly chatter about the perfect weather, though Alicia finds it unbearably hot. The entire school is on a field trip, with teachers instructing everyone to stay in line. While others are thrilled about the cute and fluffy animals, Alicia struggles to maintain her icy demeanor. Hanari and Akira, determined to make Alicia smile, watch her closely as they plan to stick with her. However, as soon as they spot a teddy bear-like animal, they get sidetracked, rushing over with wide grins, completely absorbed in petting it. Mikajima, unimpressed, reminds them that they're supposed to be focusing on Alicia, not getting distracted by their own excitement. Realizing their mission, they quickly turn their attention back to her. What they see leaves them speechless. Alicia, with her signature icy glare, is locked in a silent staring contest with a polar bear who glares right back. Even the usually noisy penguins seem intimidated into silence by her sharp stare, and when a giraffe calmly moves its long neck, she shoots it an irritated look, as if personally offended by its existence. As the instructor assigns students into groups of 15, Alicia hesitates upon seeing the fluffy rabbits, sensing a threat to her cold aura. As she reaches out to tap one, the rabbits instinctively hop away, maintaining her reputation. Akiru, watching her, is thoroughly impressed. Shiri-chan excitedly offers Akiru a rabbit, and she eagerly holds it, while Hanari and the other classmates do the same, beaming with joy. Alicia, observing them silently, is suddenly asked by Mikijima if she wants to pet one. She scoffs at the idea, but when he casually encourages her to just feel its soft fur, she hesitantly reaches out, and to her shock, it's incredibly fluffy. When he further suggests she hold it, she resists at first, but eventually cradles it carefully in her hands. For a brief moment, she actually feels happy. Luckily, no one notices, as they are all too busy with the rabbits themselves. During lunch, Akiru marvels at the large crowd of students, and the others agree it's common for schools to arrange field trips this season. After their break, they continue exploring the zoo, with Hanari and Akiru eagerly searching for gorillas. Meanwhile, Alicia, maintaining her icy expression, stares in another direction. Unintentionally, she smiles upon seeing some adorable sea creatures playing in the water, but the moment she realizes it, she immediately switches back to her cold glare, unintentionally startling a poor sea otter. Mikijima bursts into laughter, pointing out the terrified expression of the sea otter. Amused, he teases her, suggesting she try smiling instead of scaring innocent animals. Alicia, completely caught off guard, is left speechless. Alicia's shocked expression catches Mikijima off guard, and he quickly backtracks, flustered, insisting that he wasn't trying to make her smile or ask her out. His nervous clarification only makes things worse as she turns to him with a stunned yet slightly blushing face, leaving him even more puzzled. Before either of them can process the awkwardness, a little girl suddenly approaches, eyes wide with excitement. She hesitates before asking if Alicia is really Alicia Chan or just someone who looks like her. Seeing Alicia's frozen, speechless reaction, the girl tilts her head and asks if she doesn't remember her. Introducing herself as Hasuna, she happily reminds Alicia that they were in the same first-grade class. Alicia's face instantly stiffens as memories come flooding back. Hasuna was the one who used to tease her, mocking her for being half Russian yet unable to speak the language. She would call her boring and throw all sorts of insults at her. Now seeing Hasuna smiling and approaching her so casually, Alicia feels a wave of panic creeping in. Hasuna excitedly introduced herself, explaining how her family had to move suddenly, forcing her to change schools. Alicia, still in shock, remembers Hasuna as a prominent figure in her old school. Then a particular memory surfaces. Hasuna had once approached her, smiling, and upon learning Alicia was half Russian, had suggested she act cool. When Alicia had looked confused, Hasuna had confidently explained that people expected her to be cooler, otherwise she'd disappoint them. Lost in her own thoughts, Hasuna starts admiring Alicia's intense glare, calling it cute. Standing among the group, she dramatically declares that Alicia must excel in both academics and sports to meet everyone's expectations. The other girls nod in agreement, as if this were a universal rule. Determined, Alicia Chan begins acting strangely, staring at everyone and trying hard to win at sports. And now, without hesitation, she rushes in to hug Alicia, gushing over her perfect ice princess nature and beautiful appearance, delighted that Alicia has maintained the exact image she had always wanted from her. Hasuna, excited and shocked, mistakes Mikijima for her little brother, assuming he's there with his sister. He angrily corrects her, shouting he's not her brother. She, confused, then asks if he's her boyfriend, leaving both of them flustered. She laughs, teasing they could never be together because of their huge personality differences. Alicia, shocked, calls him a pipsqueak, making him more annoyed. She ignores him, thinking he's just barking. With excitement, she moves closer to Alicia, holding her hands and praising her for staying true to her unique self. Then she asks for her opinion on her personality, which panics Alicia, recalling childhood memories of her harassing her for not speaking Russian and forcing her to act like an ice princess. Before Alicia can respond, he, annoyed, dismisses her thoughts. She glares at him, but he tells her not to decide anyone's life. She angrily shouts at him to stop interfering, while he calmly explains that she's the one causing trouble. She, still irritated, approaches him and loudly declares that Alicia isn't an ordinary girl. As an ice princess, she should act cold with everyone, otherwise she'll seem weird and fail to meet people's expectations. He immediately denies her thoughts. As she shouts, the gorilla approaches them, looking angry. He yells at her, blaming her noise for annoying the gorilla. Undeterred, she smiles confidently, claiming the gorilla is impressed with her beauty. But when it glares at her, she becomes scared, hiding behind Alicia and quickly pulling her in front of the gorilla. Standing before the gorilla, she tries to stare it down but is secretly terrified. The gorilla looks at her, then turns and walks away. Hasuna, frustrated, calls it a stupid monkey. But he interrupts, annoyed, telling her not to shout. While glaring at him, she insists Alicia stay close and not talk, grabbing her hand and leading her away. At that moment, Akaru and Haneri excitedly run over, waving at her and happily sharing how the gorilla is dancing after getting its snacks. They suggest she visit the gorilla, which automatically makes her laugh out loud. Hasuna, irritated, declares that Alicia, as an ice princess, isn't going to laugh at any random animal, and she confidently looks at her for confirmation. Alicia stands there, confused and unsure. In the end, she helplessly runs off, explaining that she won't laugh. This makes Akira feel gloomy and disappointed, thinking she has failed to make her smile. Mikajima quickly reassures her that it's not true, and Haneri agrees, though still confused. Meanwhile, Hasuna, annoyed, watches them, frustrated that they made Alicia run off.